established already that they do use email quite a lot. If you'd like to start us off, Xenia.
Yeah, sure. Well, in terms of numbers, I hope I get this right. I think we're seeing 84% still daily engagement on Instagram. It's still the leading kind of like platform, even though we're under the misconception really that it's TikTok. TikTok sees the highest growth rate, 73% of them using that on a daily basis, so it's massive. WhatsApp is also a channel that we can't kind of like forget about. That is really important, but it's more for kind of like instant responses as they're further down the decision-making funnel and they want to like straight away get an answer to something. So that is absolutely important as well. And then Facebook, I think that the data showed 32%. So it is really something that is slowly but surely dying. I don't really see that coming back, to be completely honest. I think from a UX point of view and the way that the platform is designed, it's not appealing enough to GenZ brains. Instagram will probably go down a little bit as well, and TikTok will be taking over. But again, it comes down to what I said earlier. It really is important that you understand what type of content you use on what platform. And there's a place and a time and a place for all of them. It just comes down to the channel mix. For Instagram, we know that stories are the preferred format, and things like campus tours are great. Student interviews or bringing in your faculty potentially even. Slightly more polished content, still authentic obviously. And TikTok is great for behind the scenes. That's like, student takeovers. Like give them the phone and let them, talk about their experience instead of trying to curate it or, create something, design something, because that's really not what the platform's for. So really understanding where these different channels come in and how you can make sure you've got a communication and content strategy for each of those.
Amazing. And Pernilla?
Well, we do a lot of, when we use digital platforms for our clients, it's the main purpose is to generate qualitative leads for them. So for this younger audience, we work with Instagram and TikTok. And we always focus on the conversion rate. So somebody looking at an ad and going through to your website and convert to become a lead. And looking at that, TikTok doesn't want the users to leave the platform. It's not designed for that. So when you are looking to convert traffic to leads, TikTok is a very challenging platform. You get a lot of exposure, a lot of impressions, but the conversion rate is very low. So you end up with a high price per lead. On Instagram, on the other hand, yes, Reels and stories, very, very good for impressions and exposure. But if you want to convert your traffic to a lead or drive them to your website, it's definitely the feed that you need to focus on. So maybe you don't have as much attention on that, but the conversion rate is a lot higher. But with that said, we optimize all our campaigns on conversion, not on impression. So just keep that in mind when I say this. But if you want to convert traffic and get them to your page and do something with you, then I would say Instagram feed ads is the most efficient tool.
So may I inquire for TikTok and versus Instagram, because we've heard this quite a lot, but I just want to know from experienced people, is TikTok algorithm easier to break through to get the virality component, or is that a thing of the past when they just started? Is this still true today, Xenia?
Yeah, absolutely. Instagram actually does not allow you that, so that's an absolute myth. You'll never go viral on Instagram. That is very much like the platform is designed, or the algorithms are designed in a way they want you to spend money, and if you don't do that, unless you have an incredible engagement rate, which is unlikely because of the way that the algorithms are designed, that's not going to happen. With TikTok, you have to have no brand legacy. You can literally start an account from scratch. If you get above a certain threshold in terms of like engagement, within the first 2 hours, that can very much and very quickly turn into a viral piece of content.
Amazing. So I do feel a bit as a millennial sad for Facebook. Now I see why my sister never likes any of my posts. That's great. And so I really enjoyed what you mentioned with different social media platforms that have different purposes. So maybe a strategy could be, as you mentioned, having kind of the TikTok for the viral component and letting the students take over because they have the voice that you're trying to reach and target. And then maybe if the students want to get a bit more information to lead them to Instagram, where they can get a bit more of a curated and quality post and feed. And then, where does email come into this? If you'd like to start us off, Pernilla.
Well, you have to capture the lead first. So yeah, that's why we are very focused on that. That's our main purpose. The product we have is 100% focused on that. So you need to capture the email address, and then you can start. And then it's very important, once you have captured the email address at that point, that's when you need to start communicating with them, because that's when you have the attention. So that's why you need to work a lot with triggered flows rather than have some kind of content calendar around your webinars, because the user is engaging with you right now and they want more from you right now. Yeah.
Interesting. And Xenia, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, maybe adding to that, also we need to think about how GenZ has used these different platforms in their research, right? Like, Google is not a thing of the past, it's still incredibly relevant, obviously, but TikTok is a search engine in itself, and that's where they find their information. And they want, when they have found, some information about the university, for example, on Instagram, but they kind of want to get a feel for campus life, or like, events on campus and, student diversity, that's where they go to TikTok for. And TikTok videos are now can massively help your SEO as well. So they are being crawled as part of, that entire SEO process. So you need to make sure that you're optimizing on TikTok just as much, because that will really play into how well your page ranks on Google. So they all, as you can tell, they're all so intertwined, and they all should form part of a machine. They shouldn't exist in like a silo. They need to speak to each other, and they need to kind of refer to different content pieces across different platforms. So yeah, that's, I think, very important to keep in mind. TikTok is a search engine.
And Franz, I'd like to address this question to you a bit more, because of course we are focusing a lot on email itself. So from your experience and research conducted at Intuit Mailchimp, what frequency should we use for those kind of emails? Do you have a bit of insight about that? Because I can see some newsletters coming in a bit too much, and at some point it becomes spam. So what was your experience regarding that for Gen Z?
That's very hard to say. Just generally speaking, across geographies, across age groups, across different businesses or types of businesses. Again, I would start at what makes sense from a user perspective. So the content calendar was the perfect example. They really don't care about your calendar. They care about, everybody probably cares about where they are in the funnel right now, these automation triggers. That's really important. With email frequency specifically, I would advise to try to segment, to A/B test. I've seen that some businesses send way less email than they probably could, or than we see that for other businesses work. So I would really encourage everybody to look at the data and to try to A/B test to see what happens, how people react. I think that's the only way you can really know this, right? Without trying.
And you touched a point on something that was really interesting as well, because coming from Asia, my experience of a lot of Asian students is that they would use less email than what we see in Europe and America. But that might be just my bias. What does your research say?
I don't have specific research.
I do though.
Let's hear from you.
It's actually the opposite. So Asia has the highest engagement with email, followed by Europe, and then Africa is the lowest. I think sits at probably 20% less or so. There could be various reasons as to why that's the case, but Asian students are engaging quite a lot actually with email, and they do prefer that informal communication as part of the formal communication as part of the funnel.
Very interesting to see that, because a lot of feedback that we've gotten was that indeed Asia might use less, but it's good to know that Asia still leads in terms of email. Maybe just, have you seen the click-through rate being also higher for Asian students, or is it lower?
I think they benchmark kind of like similarly. I think you're making a good point, because we're not saying Asian students want emails all the time, but they are responsive to email, essentially, or more responsive to email than African students, if you figure out what your frequency should look like. And yeah, again, like we're not e-commerce businesses. We're not triggering an email every time someone like abandons the cart or leaves the page. But 2 to 3 emails a week are probably reasonable. Again, it comes down to where that person is in the funnel and how much they really want to hear from you. You can also overdo it, right? You can actually really scare them off if you're overdoing it. And then again, what type of content do you use? Do you mix kind of like between the academic insights, a bit more dry, and then the student case studies or success stories where they really get excited and think, oh my god, that could be me if I was to pursue this degree. So you need to mix up in terms of the content that you're using in email.
Amazing. So we're going to go to the questions, but before that, I'd like to just summarize a little bit what was touched upon today, which was, of course, again, email is a tool that students still want to use, especially Gen Z, and that is through the content is going to make the difference, and it has to be part of a whole ecosystem of leveraging the right digital tools at the right time with the right message that is highly personalized, and to make sure that you are effectively communicating is to do a lot of A/B testing and seeing what messages work for your students and what don't, as well as asking your current Gen Z students what they would like to see. What did the university miss the mark on that they would have loved to see as part of their whole marketing campaign? All right, so we'll start with our questions for today. So one of the questions that was asked was, with the top votes, does the behavior from Gen Z towards emails change according to their nationality/specific cultures? I think that was kind of touched upon, but we can definitely reiterate a little bit more. Xenia, if you'd like to start.
Yeah, an absolute yes, totally it does. Not just from like the behavior or kind of like the preference as to like how much they want to communicate via email, but also the type of content that they expect. So for Asian Gen Zers or Asian prospective students in general, we know that the academic content is actually really relevant. Rankings are incredibly relevant. Like they need to have that kind of reassurance that they're making the right decision moving to the other side of the world and going to, ideally a highly ranked university, for example. And yeah, again, then we see different metrics across Africa and the US and Europe. So again, it comes down to a behavioral kind of like preference, but also how you communicate with them. And that comes back to what Franz said earlier. You need to segment beyond just knowing they've downloaded a brochure, great, now I'm going to ask them to come, join a webinar. But like, where in the world are they? How much have they engaged with your content? How often have they been on your website? How much time did they spend there? All of these things, how many events have they opened and how often have they clicked? This should form like a lead scoring system where you have a good understanding of how valuable is this lead for me and how likely are they to come through as an enrolled student in the end. And that is what segmentation really is for.
Anything you'd like to add, Pernilla?
But yeah, we don't see any difference really on the email performance across the world. We see a difference in preferred communication method and the conversion rate to actually submit in their email. But once we have the email, the engagement is very similar. Comparing Europe to Latin to Asia. We do ask in our products in general, how do you prefer to be communicated with? And brochure download is by far the most popular method for the Latin America region. Whilst Europeans want to browse independently, and the African region wants to get a phone call. So it's so understanding that as well is very good when you crafting your communication strategies.
And Franz, anything you'd like to add to that?
I think again, look at the data. Look at what the data tells you. I think even these statistics are certainly right and generally right, but they can be different for your business. It could be a slightly different age group. It could be people maybe expats in a certain country that behave more like the original country they're from. So I think looking at the data is the only way to really find this out for your specific business.
I think you kind of answered the question number 3 that was the most popular, actually 2, regarding the target audience of the survey, if the research could be a bit biased because it was conducted by Mailchimp.
So I know it was with 4,000 consumers across different countries, I can tell you that. I can also say that the report is called The Science of Loyalty. You can download it, and it contains a specific data or specific approach of the research. I'm fairly certain it was not just conducted with Mailchimp users. These would be businesses using email. That wouldn't be representative. But I don't have the exact details split by country. I would invite you to download it at Mailchimp.com. Just look for The Science of Loyalty, and you'll find the exact research method.
And it's something that we've seen being a consensus throughout this panel, not only from Mailchimp only. So it is a reality that we have to face and accept, as well as with the design. So we've run out of time for the last questions, but if you'd like to ask any of the questions you asked through Slido that we weren't able to address, or get a bit more into the analytics, please feel free to contact our lovely panelists. They'll be here throughout the day, or you can also find our contact details through the Brella app, so please make sure that you download it. And as a closing statement, so thank you so much again for all of our panelists today with the amazing information regarding email as a tool. And maybe, who knows, next year for ICEF Digital 2025, we'll see you about Gen Alpha. So
likely.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.